if there's nuance, it doesn't mean that there's a one right answer and a one wrong answer.
Welcome to another episode in our special series here on A Productive Conversation called PM Talks, where myself, yours truly, Mike Vardy, and Patrick Roan, my really good friend, dive into conversation, subject matter, things that I don't really necessarily get to talk about with some of my other regular guests. This time, we kind of take a deep dive into the importance of nuance and creativity and communication and decision making. Why we think embracing nuance can lead to a more positive outlook. We compare it to absolutist thinking. We dive more into Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act, and how it encourages one to think of art as evolving and maybe to take that approach as well. So many more good nuggets. I mean, I'm so glad that we started this series. I hope you are getting a lot out of it. If you haven't listened to previous episodes, please subscribe to the podcast. That way you can check out all of our previous episodes. But let's get to this one. Here is the latest set of PM Talks here on A Productive Conversation. Enjoy. All right. Well, you've got water. I got coffee. So far, this series, people were pretty happy about. Like, I've had a couple of people say, I love it when, like, what was one of the comments I got on Twitter about our conversations? And it was related literally from the first episode. It was something along the lines of the simpleton comment that we were talking about. Why in the world is simpleton, why do we call like, when we talk about simplification? Yeah. Where was it? Where is it? I'm looking right now. Philip Hines. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's Hinds. He said, great to hear Patrick Roan again. My takeaway, simple is not equal to stupid, perhaps the very opposite. So where did the word simpleton come from? Which I brought up. I know I brought that part up. And I'm like, yeah, it's true. Like, why? What? Like, shouldn't a simpleton be like, it could be a badge of honor in some respects, right?
Yeah. But then on the other hand, as a writer, I'm, and someone who, believes in the craft, the art of writing, something I really strongly believe about language and is important about language is that it changes and evolves and grows, and one thing being used one way can become another thing being used another way.
Right.
So while certainly, we should maybe call the question, like, why is that happening? Or why is that different than it used to be? Or how did this thing morph into that thing?
Mm-hmm.
We also need to accept that that's the way that language works. And that and that maybe that's where we are. Whether or not we should be there is a completely different question. But at the end of the day, it's a question that's moot.
Yeah, because language change. Like, it's so funny because, like, we even know what inbox zero was meant when Merlin coined the phrase. Like,
yes,
and it is not that now.
Well, no, and when you hear it, you don't think of it in that way, right?
You don't think of it. Yeah, I mean, when I hear the term inbox zero, it ticks me off because of what it's become, but I think about what it's become, not what it was, first and foremost, like, to your point, right? And I wonder if this is going to dovetail nicely into our conversation about Rick Rubin and the Creative Act. I wonder if...
Dude, I had the book. I meant to bring it up here with me, and
you can grab it in a minute.
Did I?
Like, it's fine. Yeah, no, you didn't bring it. That's fine. Your notebooks are all over the place. Remember, you've got like 7 planners that are not filled. And Patrick Roan, maximalist.
No, I did
That's
not.
like behind the no. But the thing is that I wonder if Merlin's explanation, because it was more rooted in thoughtfulness and it was more strategic, and like, it's hard to explain what inbox zero really meant to somebody, right? You know what I mean? Like, but if you were to say it means you get your email inbox to zero, that's easier to explain. Like, that's like, oh, inbox zero means I have no emails in my inbox, which is not the goal of what inbox zero is meant to be,
Right.
especially when you're trying to do things like craft or make art or do deeper work. If you're
Yes.
on a perpetual quest to get your email to zero, it's you against everybody that could possibly have your
Oh
email
my God.
address, right?
Yeah. No, that's
But
impossible.
you can't say that, like, Merlin's explanation and his definition, while sound, clearly was more complex than so just get my email to zero.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you know, the problem, of course, becomes that words mean things,
Yep.
right? Uh, Another excellent and timely topical example of this, and I'm just going to say right now that I have a whole post about this on my blog that you're welcome to read, but I do not argue about politics on the internet,
Yeah.
period. End of story. But this just happens to make a good example. The defund the police movement here in the
Mm,
U.S. The folks out there decrying, we've got to defund the police. Da,
yep.
da, da. When in reality, what they meant was, no, we need to make sure that the police are doing the job that they are best suited and able to do, and redirect some of the money that we are paying for that service in our communities to pay for other people, other agencies responding to the things that the police are not both able or good at responding to.
Yeah.
But how do you fit that all on a two-word rally cry?
You can't. And the problem is absolutism loves brevity.
Oh my gosh. It does it ever.
It totally does. When you think about,
Right?
like, if I was to go and look at this from the vantage point of, and I've talked about this before. I've talked about this with David Sparks before too. The idea of when Obi-Wan in the Revenge of the Sith says only a Sith deals in absolutes. I'm like, well, wait a minute though,
Mm-hmm.
because the Jedi Order, like as it was created in episode, like in the prequels, as they are now known, um, they were pretty absolute about a lot of their things,
About a
right?
lot about their things, and it's pretty much what led to, say, the
Yeah, the
slaughter of the
whole
Jedi Temple and the rise of Darth Vader and
right.
the
But your
new
argument,
Sith order, as it were.
but the argument could be, and so this is where it gets really nerdy, is that the argument is, well, when they decided not to go with what they were supposed to, and they allowed Anakin to train even though he was too young or too old rather. That breaking that rule, they would argue, well, that's what led to the empire because we deviated from that rule.
Mhm.
It led to that. But if anything, I would think that exposed the fact is that it exposed the problems of being so righteous about a very
Yeah,
specific thing. And that's
yeah,
why Qui-Gon Jinn's my favorite Jedi, because he was kind of like one that was like, well, I don't listen to quote, the Jedi Council. And I certainly don't I listen to the way of the Force. I'm listening to the Force. I'm listening to what,
yeah.
and to me, he was and there's been plenty of stories on YouTube and elsewhere that says that, in Star Wars geeks, for lack of a better term, and I am one, will say that Qui-Gon was the Jedi that the Emperor feared more than anybody else because he didn't follow those rules that the Jedi Council wanted him to.
Hmm.
And that was the one that he's like, I want this one out of the way. Like
Hmm.
get him out of the way and we'll be good because Obi-Wan and all the other ones will they'll do what I predict them to do. This other
Right.
guy, he goes off script. I
Yeah,
don't like that. And that's,
yeah,
I think the problem is that when you say, like, I think as you're talking about this, there are bad actors everywhere in every arena, whether you look at it from a sports arena, a political, or like whatever. There are bad actors, and what I mean by that is, of course, there's always going to be somebody that is going to look to circumvent what's going on, either intentionally or just
or yeah,
incidentally.
yeah, yeah.
It's
Or
not
yeah, I always go back to the quote from the Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight with Michael Caine, right?
mhm,
It's know, some men don't respond to money or goods or whatever. They just want to watch the world burn, right?
Yep.
There are those people.
There are, and I think the thing is the more that we lean into, which is why I really like Rick Rubin's book, and I'm still not done it yet. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But what I like about the intersection of art and commerce, the one of the things I like is that there is no really right or wrong, despite the fact that there is such a desire to make something right or wrong. From the business side of things, right? Like,
Right. Well, with art, it's a desire to
express, express.
express, but also to invite a reaction.
Sure.
Right. One of the quotes I use or things I say to my wife is something we came up with uh, um, in our discussions about art. And what we love about it is art always does its job.
Yeah.
Now, it may not be the job that you want. It may not be the job that you expect. It may not be a job that you understand. It may not even be a job that you like, but that doesn't mean that art's not doing its job.
Right. Well, you've seen
Art
that
always does its job.
you've seen that art exhibit where it's the brick that's being built, and then there's a book in the bottom of it, and it throws the entire brick wall off. And I think it's about that idea of disruption. Like, knowledge can be a disrupting force, right?
Yeah.
And like that's the message, right?
Right.
And I remember going to an art gallery in Montreal 2 years ago when Nick Cave, who admittedly his music is an acquired taste. I don't know if you've listened to Nick Cave in the Backseats before.
Yeah.
It's an acquired taste, but his music has been covered by like Johnny Cash and
Oh my
others.
gosh,
Like
all sorts of folks, yeah.
I mean, Rubin interviewed him. We'll link it in the show notes. There's an interview on Rick Rubin's podcast with Nick Cave, and it's fast. Like, it's just a really good, deep conversation about art, and it's. But I remember going into this. This is an example of business and art kind of clashing, I think. So I'm in this Montreal for this conference that I'm attending, and I'm actually speaking on I'm moderating a panel. So I'm not even speaking, I'm moderating it, which you could argue can be challenging in a completely different way, because I'm corralling people who, have had limited time to interact with one another. So I mean, it's not like I'm against moderating a panel, and I've done it before, but it's not like I can just go up and be asked questions. I actually have to do some preparation and make it work. So the day that we are going, I think it's like earlier in the day, and I decide to buy tickets to Nick Cave's gallery show that was I think it was making its debut in Montreal, or its only Canadian stop in Montreal. I'm like, I want to go see this because I'm in Montreal. It's April. I'm going to go. And I walk, and I remember, I loved it, by the way. It was a very small, discreet, but it had like things like, weirdly enough, like he kept like Nina Simone's chewing gum. Like he had that, that he put on display with like a story about Nina Simone and stuff like that. And there was like he kept, like, speaking of maximalism, there's a lot of stuff he kept that is like, wow, right? And his entire office is replicated in this museum display. I think it's still touring, so if you have a chance to go see it, you can actually like use his piano. He encouraged it. I remember sitting in the space, and one of the museum employees, like, I'm just sitting at the desk, and I go, have you like touched anything? I'm like, oh no. They're like, no. He wants you to interact with the space. Like, he wants you to, and I'm like, really? And by the way, it was like a Wednesday after, like, no one was there. It was just me. Like, there was nobody else, which made it even better because I got to freely walk and not. But the reason I bring it up is I remember when I got back to the venue, and one of the organizers was like, so what'd you do? I'm like, oh, I went to an art gallery. And the look on their face was, it wasn't like incredulous, but it was like, really? Like, it was very much like, but you're here at this thing for business. Why did you go and there is something about what art does, and I think what creative work does, is it gives you space. It does. I believe, like, and what you do with that space can be informed by the art, or it can be as a result of what the art kind of did, right? Or, when because I mean, again, being in that gallery, it was just me immersed with whatever was going on, and every bit of art is different. Listening to watching a Taylor Swift concert, like checking that out, like listening to as we're recording this, like the day after Tracy Chapman and Luke Combs, I think it was Luke Combs,
Yeah, it was Luke Combs.
did the duet
On the Grammy. Yeah, it
yeah yeah
was
which
which she sounded fantastic, and he was barely struggling to hang on. But
but he
I
was
mean,
struggling to hang on because he was so enamored, like I
well,
could see
yeah,
the look
yeah,
on his
because he's
face, like
so enamored, and she was so great.
yeah,
I mean, she sounded even better than she did
well,
back in the day.
and she
And
looks great. Yeah,
full
she go
disclosure,
ahead,
here's
yeah,
something you should know.
yeah.
Classmate of my wife's in college.
Mm-hmm.
She went to college with my wife. My wife knew her. She
Yeah,
got her record deal from. It just so happened that another guy they went to college with,
right.
his dad was a major producer with, I think, RCA or
So Tracy Chapman went to school with, you know,
she went to Tufts. Yeah.
wow,
and,
okay.
and played in the coffee shops around Tufts in Boston, um and was in at least a couple of classes with my wife. I mean, they graduated from in the same class. I mean, they
Mm-hmm.
were in the same class in college and whatnot. And so my wife kind of knows Tracy. They're not like, oh, I can call you on the phone and we're buzz or whatever, but
Right.
they're fellow alums, and they went to school together at a relatively small private liberal arts school.
That's
Um,
fascinating.
yeah. So yeah, my wife knows a lot of famous. I was just talking with someone today about how my wife knows Kevin Bacon.
Really?
Yes.
So you are literally 1 degree
I
away
am
from Kevin.
literally 1 degree away from Kevin Bacon. And not just like
Not in movies, but like in real life.
Met him and like shook his hand and
Oh
it's
wow.
can I snap a selfie or something. But
Mm-hmm.
spent a fair bit of time with him. Long story short, she used to be the kind of managing producer for a venue here in town, and the Bacon brothers played there, but she was in charge of all the green room setup and transportation and everything else. And so she didn't have anyone to pick him up at the airport and didn't want to have to pay for the taxi or the limo or whatever. So she just went and picked him and his brother up in the airport, and they chatted, and she got him set up at the place, and hung around for sound check, got him any lunch that they needed, the whole 9 yards. She's like spent the day with him.
That's hilarious. It's so by the way, I mean, having worked in college radio, and I would go to the June, like I've had a chance to hang out with a few people that mainly in the Canadian music scene, but I mean elsewhere too. And there's something about just, and where I live too, we get a lot of people in Victoria that come. I mean, it's a popular tourist destination, so there's occasionally like actors that will come here, especially if they're filming in Vancouver. They'll come over here for the day. There is something about once you've had that experience of just being around someone like Chris Christopherson. When I worked at the film festival, we sat around in the film festival office and just drank beer, like a bunch of us, with Chris Christopherson.
Yeah.
And it was just like, and he was just so cool and so relaxed. And I think that the key is, and I mean, I think we're at an age now where getting wowed to the degree of like fanboying at a level, it doesn't happen to the same degree. It's more of a respect thing than a fan thing, right?
Exactly, and it happens in a weird way, right? The things that people we fanboy are completely different than they're not pop stars. We for at least back in the day, I would have fanboyed Merlin.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I remember, and I mean, even David and stuff. Like, there are people who it's. I was watching Casey Neistat do his video about the Vision Pro, the new Apple product, which I know you bought. But
no.
But yours just has a blinking cursor, though. I think, right on the
screen. It literally just text edit.
That's exactly.
Right, just text edit.
I don't want my files to be trapped in this goggle. But
plain text, baby.
Yeah, there was you and Chris Bailey. I should just get you two in a room talking about Simple Note and that. But nonetheless, so I was watching the video, and a couple of guys came out of there. He was in Times Square walking around with Vision Pro on, and Case. I mean, this is an example of art and commerce colliding in a great way, because he's making the film on his terms, the way he would make it, but it's still a review of the Vision Pro. And the best line from the whole thing is, "This is the worst Vision Pro that Apple will ever make."
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Which is
True.
like, but that is a
True. Just like the
carefully
Gen 1 iPhone was the worst iPhone
right.
Apple ever made.
That is like and the reason I bring it up is because these two guys walked out of like a store in Times Square and they saw Casey, and that's who they really wanted to meet in New York City of
Yeah, yeah,
all the
yeah.
people, and
Yeah.
Casey
They
just
wanted
happened to
me.
be there, and so
Yeah.
they took pictures and stuff. But that like people fanboy, like I've gone to some of the conferences where they'll
Oh,
fanboy
yeah.
over like Casey
Yeah.
or James
Yeah.
Clear, like I mean,
Oh my gosh.
right?
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
mean, and the thing is if James and I ran into each other, and if you ran into James too, I mean, you've known James for quite a while. Did you ever get a chance to hang out with James? I don't know if you did.
No, we know.
No,
No,
a
we.
World Domination Summit, Chris Guillebeau's conference we did. Like I
Yeah.
remember going, and I mean, we would. It's not a peer thing. It's a like again. It's a not mutual admiration society kind of thing. But you know what I mean?
Well,
Like
but even within even within your own within your own industry, within
yep.
whatever it is you do,
Mhm.
right? There are going to be those people who you admire,
Yes.
right? People who are doing something that you wish you were doing, or that like really like,
There's
you're
an
living
energy
here.
they give off
I
that you
live
can't. Yeah, yeah,
here,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Exactly. And thank you so much for. I'm such a fan, and this, that, and the other, right?
Like Rick Rubin. If we
Yeah.
if
Yes.
Rick Rubin would be somebody that I would love to,
Oh
like
man.
just sit and chat
Oh,
with.
to sit and chat with Rick Rubin would be a gas. Can you imagine? He's got so many great musician stories, right? I mean, that alone would be worth it. Yeah, let's talk about the book.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because here's the thing about the book, and that is that this is a book for people who don't believe that they are creative.
Yeah.
This is not a book for people who not only believe they are creative, know they are creative, and practice that creativity. I'm just saying that I found the book hard to get through simply because I didn't feel like it was really giving me or telling me anything I didn't already know.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And sure, it's nice to have validation, no question about it. And sure, there's some great stories in there and some great analogies and everything else. And I don't want to stop people. The book is worth reading, but I just want you to understand, those of you who have not read the book and may have some interest in reading the book, that this is not going to open up any doors or light bulb moments that I think, at least they didn't for me,
Yeah.
that I didn't already have, right?
See, for me, it was different.
Uh-huh.
For me, it was
Which is art doing its job, by the way.
exactly. Number one, it's not a book you can rush through, period. I don't care whether you're
Yeah.
creative or otherwise, because
Yeah.
there is a lot of things to ruminate and reflect on, I believe. Yes, there's a lot of stuff that we already know and have heard before, right? And if you've ever seen Rick or heard Rick do an interview, you're going to glean a lot of stuff from that. The nice thing is that there's an uninterrupted vibe to this book that I think you wouldn't get necessarily from an interview. But what I did like is, for me, it was very much a kind of like when you get to like reading, like writing down to the bones, like
Mhm.
like Goldberg's book and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Like it's when you say
Right.
it's not for did you say it's not for people who already know that they're creative?
I would say that people who already know they're creative, this will be a lot of validation and less information.
I would agree on that front. I also think that it is helpful for somebody who knows they're creative, has had experience creating in the past, and are stuck.
Oh, well, that's a whole different thing. And
Right.
yeah,
And
I would agree with you on that.
yes, because and not just necessarily stuck in like I haven't created in a long time, but stuck in I'm not giving this the attention it deserves. I'm not
Yeah.
like that leveling up. There's a piece in here where, and there's a lot of permissiveness that goes on in this book. So not just validation, but like Rick really kind of says, I'm giving you permission to do this because and because it's coming from an authoritative voice, you feel almost compelled that yes,
Yeah, like this is okay.
but I think the interesting thing is that if you're coming to this book for a singular answer, you're not going to get one because
Yeah.
because it's literally in the title. It's a way of being. Like there's an
Yeah.
evolutionary piece, right?
Right.
You know, there's some. I mean, I dog-eared a
And
bunch of stuff.
a way of being and a way of seeing and
Yeah,
a way of a way of approaching and interacting,
right.
right? And the understanding that um it's not magic,
No,
i.e., that creativity is not some sorcery that some people are born. It's not the force, to bring this back around to the
right,
Jedi, right?
right.
Although he might argue, well, no, it kind of is,
Well,
but
yeah. I mean, I think he would. I think he would say that there's some
right.
elements of it like that.
There's
But
right. But I guess what I'm saying is, okay, let's make that. Let's go there. Yes, like the Force, this is really about sensing what is already there, what is already presence, tapping into that energy that is in everything and flows through us
yeah,
and flows out of us and flows through the things that we see and the touch and the nature and the this, that, this, and that creativity is a force that can be tapped into by anyone who is willing
hmm,
to open themselves up to that, right?
yeah,
That that the moment that you take an exhale, let go, and start to kind of feel your way through it, that's when you'll get it,
right.
right?
You know, I'm going to link to this in the show notes as well. But the interview that Rick Rubin had with Stephen Pressfield is fascinating
No, I can
because
imagine.
because Rick talks about the source in the book, right? Which is a positive thing. Like you're trying to tap
Yes,
into the source,
yes,
whereas
yes.
Pressfield talks about the resistance.
Resistance.
So it's
Yeah.
almost like those
Well,
these the but my what
there's
I
a
was going to say.
structural tension between them.
Yes, yes. And so it's interesting because I think the war of art is for somebody who is frustrated,
Ooh. Ooh.
whereas this book is more for the people who are like, I know that it's more about kicking it up a notch, digging deeper,
Yeah.
right? Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. 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 Maybe, yeah, tapping into it a little bit deeper.
Because
Oh,
one is about avoiding the resistance, keeping it at bay. The other one is about leaning into the source, right? So they're two different approaches in a lot of ways, but the ends are the same. Like you come out on the
yeah.
other side with something.
Yeah.
And it's, to me, one of the things that I found really compelling about Rick's writing is very much, he lives by the credo, the audience comes last. Like this book is not for everybody at all because it's not like when he says the audience comes last, that's something that really resonated with me because I
Mm.
think when you're thinking about making something, especially when you're in this space of like art and commerce and you're making it for a living, you there is a propensity and there's a large pull to make something that people will buy, something commercial,
Mm.
something this, as opposed to doing, like, I remember having a conversation about this idea that I had, which will go under like the Mike Vardy umbrella or whatever. And I remember bringing it to some friends, and they were like, the idea of like better to be clear than clever, which is true. Better to be clear than clever. Like they like just be clear about it. Don't be clever in terms of what you want to phrase this thing as. But the artist in me wants to be flippin' clever, like really does, right? Because that's, like I love, when I was doing comedy, like one of the my favorite things I ever wrote, and you can still watch it on YouTube, although it plays much better on stage, is this sketch called Jet Parker Action Hero, where it's about this action hero who is supposed to go to, I think, Colombia or somewhere and get like free the diplomats. But and so it's very tense, right? He gets a call. He's wearing like a undershirt, like a sleeveless undershirt, and he's like shaved head. My late friend Greg played him. He was like brilliant on film and even on stage.
Yeah.
And once he gets off the phone, he pulls out his suitcase and starts packing for the trip.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And on film, he takes his time packing, and then he walks off frame. And then the narrator turns, tune in next week for another exciting episode of Jet Parker, Action Hero. So the entire bit is just him. Now, Imagine on stage how that played. So I wasn't there because I didn't go to San Francisco when we did it there, but they played it on stage. And the direction I gave, because I wrote and directed the scene, I wasn't in it,
Right.
was
Right.
whenever you do this, I mean, you get to decide when you're done packing. Like that's, but you need to be. I go, here's the thing. When
Hmm.
it gets uncomfortable, stick around a little longer. When it gets even a
Hmm.
bit more uncomfortable, stick. You're going to hear titters from the audience. You're going to hear a laugh, especially a more sophisticated audience. Like some are going to be like, "What the? Like, did he forget his line?" But then they're going to
Hmm.
get it, and as they get it, like I get
Hmm.
goosebumps even just talking about it right now.
Yeah.
And they finished it, and they got roar like in San Francisco because they came back
Oh
and told me
yeah.
roars of applause, and they opened. So my troupe opened for Bruce McCullough of Kids in the Hall. That was one of the
Oh
things.
wow.
And
Okay.
Scott Thompson was in the crowd watching the show. And
Awesome.
the after party, the people that were there, they said that they loved that sketch. They're like, that
Yeah.
sketch was just,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that sketch is completely unconventional. Like it's
Yeah.
outside the box and it's clever as all get out because
Yeah.
who would do like, you see stuff like that and it's just like, it makes perfect sense that like what happens between like that phone call and him getting on a plane and being in the jungle? Well, he
Hmm.
has to pack. Like
Well, sure.
clearly,
Yeah. Yeah.
and comedy
Yeah.
is
Well,
all
like
about
everybody else. Yeah.
comedy is about making the extraordinary ordinary, the ordinary extraordinary. That's like the
So,
biggest rules of comedy. So to
uh,
me,
yeah.
when I read Rubin's The Creative Act, all that like speaking of validation, I just kept reading going, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas the resistance, I'm like, yeah, like when I'm reading The War of Art, it's more like, you're right, I do need to get past this. Whereas the
Hmm.
Creative Act, when I'm reading that, I'm like, yeah, this is the way I am, and this is the way I
Yeah.
want to operate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. 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 Exactly. And I want to keep doing this. So, let me tell you about one of my favorite art
Mm-hmm.
gallery experiences since we're talking about them,
Sure.
and it actually relates. Mark Mothersbaugh of Devo fame. He's the lead singer, founder, whatever of the band Devo. He also is a very prolific and talented visual artist. Many people may not know, but Devo actually formed when they were all in art school. They weren't there for music. They were there. They were there in art school,
Wow.
and they formed this band. And he never stopped practicing art. And his last major exposition was called Myopia. And after being at MoMA for a while, it toured around. It came here to the Minneapolis Institute of Art, and so I got a chance to see it, and it is really fantastic. Another thing to know about Mark Mothersbaugh is that he really does have myopia. Hence the reason why he wears the glasses, the thick rimmed glasses,
Right.
is because he's got his lenses are that thick. They're super thick. Like he needs to know. Because yeah. And it really kind of explores how that, like how he sees things, so the whole theme of the exhibition mainly was kind of around that. But there were a few other pieces thrown in, pieces he had done that weren't necessarily thematic
Mm-hmm.
within the exhibition itself, but had their own merit. And this is one of those. So my daughter Beatrix, I believe I've told you, but I'm saying this because this is a podcast and not
Mm-hmm.
everyone knows me. I think she was about 9 or 10 at the time when we saw this. Actually, she might have been younger. We're walking through the exhibition. She loves art. She especially loves modern art. As since she was a little baby, taking her to museums is not a is not a irregular thing for us. She absolutely loves them and has thoughts. Beatrix does and always has. So I turned the corner and in kind of a dark corner, but it's well lit from above. Inside of this glass case, on top of this pedestal, is a giant ice cream cone.
Mm-hmm.
The swirl of the cone is red, and the cone itself is brass, is this
Okay.
bright brass. And the name of the piece is Ruby Custard. Custard spelled Kusturd, by the way.
Okay.
All right. And Mark's Mothersbaugh being kind of an art house, very avant-garde, artist. I saw this piece and I thought, wow, this is interesting. I wonder what this is about. Because just on its face, it looked like a big gold and red ice cream
Mm-hmm.
cone. Like I couldn't, and it was out of context. And Beatrix is looking at it too. And so then I started reading the card next to the piece on the wall. And the more I read the card, the more my jaw dropped to the floor. Here's the story.
Mm.
Mark Mothersbaugh made enough money in his work with Devo and other things that he had the opportunity and purchased the world's largest uncut ruby.
Whoa.
Exactly. You see where this is going, right?
Yeah. Keep going. Wow.
So he put this uncut ruby that he purchased for several $100,000 up on the shelf in his studio and waited for the inspiration to strike.
Right. Wow.
At which point he decided that the best thing he could do with the world's largest uncut ruby was this. And so I'm like, okay, that is the most hell yeah, punk rock,
Yep.
art doing his job. Raw, you go, I get it. This is awesome. This is like the best thing. It's so hilarious. It's so just nuts, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
like everything, right? And so I'm so excited. I explained it to Beatrix. And and she's looking at me, and as I'm explaining it, she's getting more and more quizzical look. I'm thinking maybe she's not understanding it. But then I get to the end of it. I said, "So what do you think?" And that's when I understand. No, she got it perfectly. She said, "Well, that's stupid." Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
You get it. Art did its job.
Yeah.
The point being that kind of stupidity to someone who is kind of tapped into that kind of rebellious avant-garde, Art Nouveau, sort of, punk rock ethic is one thing. To the little girl who would have loved to have seen a beautiful jewel, that's another.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
And guess what? It can be both, right?
Yeah, of course it can.
Both of those things.
Yep.
Just in the same way that yes, that this book can help those who are need the validation, need the permission, right, and need the or need a little bit of like heck yeah,
Yeah.
heck yeah.
Yeah.
Also, it could be useful to those who are up against that resistance and need to go to war against it, and that this is going to let them know that it's okay to pick up that weapon and kill it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that for me, yeah.
Preaching to the choir.
I don't even know if it's that. I suppose, yeah, maybe in a way, but I don't know if that really quite puts the finger on it. But it's worthwhile. Certainly is something that's going to go into my library. It will probably go somewhere close to the Anne Lamott book, or the the Stephen Pressfield book. Actually, it could go somewhere around Cal Newport with the deep work, because I think in a lot of ways it fits there for some reason. I don't know. I can't quite put my finger on why yet, but
I think it fits. I think this fits nicely if you're going to put it between two of Cal's books. So Good They Can't Ignore You and Deep Work. It's right in the middle of that.
Yeah.
So now, for those that made it this far in the episode, they're like, "Oh, and that's when Mike took the photo that went on social media for everyone to see."
Yeah.
Oh, have you ever been to Andy Warhol's museum in Pittsburgh?
I have not. I would love to. That would be great.
It's the largest, from what I recall, the largest art museum in North America dedicated to a single artist. It's like 8 stories or something like that. And speaking of,
he's prolific enough to
he
be
was
able to host such a thing.
And they're like an example of somebody who, made a Burger King commercial about, and that was a form of art, like that commercial. Yeah. It's actually on display in the museum. They actually have it running. Yeah.
fits well within his overall work,
It
right?
does. It does. It does. And I forget who. I want to say it was somebody from the Pixies. That is it. Kim or Kelly? It might have been Kim. Kim Gordon. That's who it was. It was Kim
Yeah.
Gordon. Kim Gordon had an art like because they normally dedicate like an installation inside. And Kim Gordon from the Pixies had a art display on there as well. And it was
Wow.
again very. I think that when you go into any of these environments, like whether it's reading, watching a film, et cetera, there is something about artistry that it's unfortunately it's the thing that gets defunded. Speaking of,
Mm.
going back to what we talked about at the beginning, faster than anything else because it's very hard to quantify. It's incredibly hard to quantify. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's the thing that kind of at the end of the day it separates us in a lot of ways from other forms of life because to your point, what one piece of art means to you could mean something different to someone else, right? And that nuance is such a huge part of the human experience that and I wonder if as we get older, this is probably a subject for another time, but nonetheless, if we recognize that nuance is either going to serve us or the ability it should serve us, but there's some people who get so, and I'm being very general here, that get so stuck in their ways that nuance almost completely disappears. And I wonder if the quality or the fulfillment level of life when that happens is affected, like in a negative way.
Well, I hate to say it, but this kind of also then dovetails into our simplicity discussion from last time, right?
Yeah.
So here's the deal with nuance. Nuance is complex,
Hmm.
right? If there's nuance, it doesn't mean that there's a one right answer and a one wrong answer,
Right.
right?
Yep.
It means that there's maybe sort of possibly a right answer and maybe sort of possibly a wrong one, but we're not really sure. And the wrong one might actually be the right one, and the right one might actually be quite wrong.
Yep.
And we're
And
not
it's
quite
very
sure.
individualized, right? Like it might be wrong
And
for you, but might be right for someone else, right? Yeah.
exactly, right? And it's very easy to say the person who makes one choice isn't making it for the right reasons, right?
Right.
And therefore you can understand it, or the person making the wrong choice or making the right choice might be doing it for the wrong reasons. And like, yeah, nuance is extremely complex, but sadly, it is also a diminishing resource in this world.
Terry Crews talked about that on the Rich Roll podcast. He said the world is losing nuance.
It's really losing nuance and losing it fast. And I think that that's an extremely both sad and dangerous thing because we tend to use that lack of nuance to justify things that perhaps we would be better served by looking at it in a more holistic and complete way.
Yeah, nuance doesn't really serve the ego, which is part of the problem too. Because the
Well,
ego, well,
sure.
and that I think that's part of it is that if there is this really, and again maybe it's because we're exposed to so much. So let's be clear, like we get a lot more information thrown at us these days than we ever have, and we can choose to absorb it or not. But the point is it's being thrust in many different directions.
Sure,
But
yeah.
part of it is an unwillingness to be unsure. You know what I mean? Like, because if it's absolute, if it's black or white, left or right, then it removes conflict in some respect because you at least find your team with whatever side you're choosing, right?
Mhm,
Now whether that's right or wrong is like that's not what I'm pointing out here. What I'm
mhm.
pointing out is that if you say that, well, I'm not really sure. Yeah, we hear that so much more as parents now. Like it's okay to say to your kids, like, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
And you should. But there is this decreasing generalized statement that's based on a lot of information that gets thrust at us. But it's almost like if you say that you don't know, then you're stupid. And if you're stupid, then why are you in the position that you're in? Why should we listen to you? It's even though that's not what it means,
No.
it gets twisted that way.
Well, and I want to go back to what you said about, all of this information coming our
Hmm.
way. Right? Part of the destruction of nuance is because of the
Yeah.
deluge, right?
Yep.
Because of the deluge, we have to, in order to just be able to process,
Hmm.
it forces us to make binary choices,
Yeah, we have to
right?
delineate. And here's the thing, we have to discriminate, but the problem with the word discriminate, back to words, is that
Mhm.
discriminate sounds negative
It,
in
it
and of itself.
it
Which,
does,
but
and it can be,
it
but
can be,
it
absolutely.
also can be,
It's like
uh,
it's like reluctance. Reluctance can be a very bad thing, depending
yes.
on what you're, but it can also be a very good thing if you're being thoughtful about it. Like, again, there's nuance right there.
Well, so real world example
Sure.
of what we're talking about here, about the deluge and how to deal with it,
Hmm.
and why we choose the ways that we do to deal with it. My daughter's passport expired.
Okay.
This was several months ago now. My daughter's passport expired. We were thinking about taking an international trip for spring break, which we have now booked. She got her passport. Everything's great. We only booked it recently because we weren't sure that she was going to get her passport in time. Why? Well, because, and by I say we weren't sure, what I really
Hmm.
mean is Bethany, my wife, was not sure.
Right.
Because everything she read online, even the what the guy who took our passport application said to us was that, yeah, we're like 3 months behind.
Hmm.
And so don't expect this anytime soon, yada, 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 yada.
Right.
Because the system's just overwhelmed right now and blah, 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 blah. And so Bethany, being more of a pessimist than I am, and me being the optimist, Bethany was like, well, there goes we can't go there, I guess. Let's start
Hmm.
and making other plans because we got. I'm like, no, we're gonna get our. It's not gonna take that long.
Right.
She said, well, he said it was, and you even go to the website, and I'm hearing from all my friends that it's taking this long, and blah, 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 blah. I said, no, it's not going to take that long. We're going to have her passport in time. No, we're not. Okay. All right. Fine. 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 Let's just go ahead and make other plans. That's all
Yeah.
right. Go. Yep. Yep. And we started doing that, started making other plans. And, sure enough, Beatrix's passport showed up within, I believe it was 4 weeks, three and a
Okay.
half, maybe,
Hmm.
as opposed to 3 months. And I said, yeah, honey, I don't want to, I,
No,
I'm
no,
not
no.
going
Yeah,
to
you
say
don't
I
want to do
told,
that.
I'm not going to say I told you so.
No.
But since I'm not going to tell you I told you so, let me just tell you the metric that was going on in my mind before you kind of just shut me down.
Hmm.
The metric that was going on in my mind is this. You have a million things coming at you. You're way behind. Where do you start? Well, I suppose you start with the easy ones. You get all the easy ones done first.
Hmm.
You literally, just any of the easy ones that come in, you turn around. Here's a 16-year-old kid, US citizen, got the birth certificate, has had a passport since she was 3 months old. Yeah, this is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Zero criminal record, zero. No, it's a kid. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is like literally stamp, stamp, send it back.
Yep.
Done. Like, and now we have one less than the 100,000 that we had before,
Yep.
right? That's why I knew it was going to come back quickly because you're going to take the lowest hanging fruit, make a decision, and move the F along so that you can then free up the space and the time to focus on the things that are more difficult, right?
Hmm.
So if we can do that with the information that's coming in to us, if we can do that with the news that's coming to us, with the tweets that are coming to us, with the Facebook posts that are coming to us, with the Reddits that are coming to us, with the threads that are coming to us, with the Instagram posts that are coming to us, with the email that's coming to us, I mean, that's what Inbox Zero was about, right?
Yeah. It was about nuance. Oh boy. This is where we come around to the end, where it's like the episode was going to be called creativity or artistry. Nah, it's just called nuance now because in all honesty, there is, even when we look at this book, when you look at most like using nuance as your ally is going to get you a heck of a lot further. It will, I believe it'll create a more, like you said, a more positive and optimistic outlook than looking at things from this, no pun intended, myopic,
Mhm.
absolute view. Raise your hands, those that get your email inbox down to zero every day. at the
No.
end of it never,
No.
because the deluge is constant, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fascinating. I think that if we spent more time leaning into nuance as opposed to running away from it screaming,
Mhm.
I don't even want to say productive. We'll just be far more, our relationship with time will be that much better. And it's not just time, it's the space aspect. Minimalism is nuanced, for crying out loud. I mean, it's even,
Don't get me
there's so
started.
many things. Enoughness. We talked about
Yeah,
this
well, the
recently.
whole reason I chose enough is because of the nuance. I didn't want to write a book called Minimalism or Death, right?
Yeah.
I just want,
Join us or die.
yeah, that's not the way that that life works for most of us. I'm
Yeah.
glad it works that way for Ryan and for all the other folks, but it doesn't work that way for me,
No,
right?
no. It is fascinating. And when you look at, I think even looking at books like The War of Art and The Creative Act, A Way of Being, if anything, I think it shows you the nuance that you may be missing.
Yeah.
It can act as a reminder of it, like how nothing will ever be black and white, left or right. There will always be gray. And I think, well, and actually it's kind of suitable when you think about it. The cover of this book is very gray.
In fact, so, oh well.
Well, that's it. Thanks
Yeah,
so
we
much
should
for
wrap
this
it up.
Yeah. Where again, people can find you. We've got the
Uh,
links in the show notes. Is there anything?
So
Yeah.
I changed patrickrone.com to be more of a landing page so that it will direct people to everywhere I am and give you a sense of all the things I do, only some of which are online. It talks about everything from my online spaces to the volunteer circus rigging I do. No, that's not a euphemism. So little teaser here.
Sure.
I don't quite know when it's going to be officially done and out,
Oh, there it is. Okay.
but I've got a new something coming sometime soon. So yeah, I've been working on a book. I'm getting very close. You can see right next to this one is a red pen.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. As you're in the editing phase.
Oh, once I'm done with this red pen, I should have something. So
So you had that to Galley that you had sent just to look
that's
to see what everything
yeah,
was.
exactly.
Yeah.
Just so I could mark it up and make edits and corrections and things like that.
This will be a March episode, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's the March episode.
Oh, well, that gives me some time then. Good.
You don't have to. We've got the nice
March
little.
14th is my target publication date.
There you go. There you go. Patrick, again, it's always a treat. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Oh, thank you, Mike. I hope you're feeling better.
Yeah, thanks. We'll see you next month.
All right, sounds great. Take care.
There we have it. Another episode in the books, another episode in this series done. Again, if you're enjoying this series, I'd love to hear from you. Email podcast@productivityist.com and let me know what you think. Another way to let me know what you think about the podcast is to rate or review the podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you are getting your podcasts. Rate, review the show. That way it makes it easier for me to understand what I can do to make the show better, but also, what I'm doing well. Another thing you can do to support the show, other than subscribing, which I mentioned off the top, is to check out the sponsors you heard during our conversation today. Go to productivityist.com/podcast sponsors to check that out. Show notes, by the way, if you're not looking at them wherever you get your podcasts, you can find them at productivityist.com/podcast 518. That's it for this episode. We'll be back next week with another regular episode of A Productive Conversation, as regular as those episodes can be. Until then, I'm Mike Vardy, the host of A Productive Conversation, reminding you to stop doing productive and start being productive. See you later.